Hey there, commercial construction coffee talk fans. Thanks for chiming in. My name's David Corson. I'm your host. I'm also the publisher and editor of Commercial Construction and Renovation Magazine. This is what it used to look like. I'm pulling out some archives here, October of 2020. Eleanor Alvarez, CEO of Ganthorn Suites. Thanks for gracing the cover. And I always like holding the magazine in my hand, see what things are doing. Let's see what I was doing here. This one was 144 pages. I'm riding motorcycles with my kid in my old house, and he was flipping bikes and cars before had his driver's license. You know, he always just wanted to work with his hands. But the last issue we published was August of 2021 when I had White Castle on my cover, the VP of Ops, and it was their largest facility that they had ever built. And that was the last one we did it. So I don't miss the printer, I don't miss the publisher, or the post office, but I do miss holding the magazine in my hand. So whenever I do these podcasts, I always try to grab some archives. But this was a great looking issue, and but it's been an amazing ride. Last month, we had just under 7 million people hit the website. I had 49, just under 49 million in 2024. And if things go well and we hang it, keep it together, by the end of the year, I'll probably go over 80 million people hitting the website, consuming content, et cetera, for this year. It's just been unbelievable. And with the way the technology is moving at warp speed these days, you never know what's coming down the pike. But all in all, sunny. It's been kind of rainy down here over the last couple of weeks. I'm finishing my lake lot build. All I've got is my sod and my landscaping to get finished. The interior of the house is done. Got my house up for sale, my studio in here. Actually, I think someone's downstairs taking a walkthrough of the house while I'm doing this. I'm like, I'm on the air recording on my door and in my studio here. But just a Mother's Day weekend was last weekend. You got this week. You got Memorial Day coming up. You got the NHL playoffs, the NBA playoffs. You got college lacrosse going on. The first round was this weekend, and Memorial Day holiday coming up at the end of the month. I can't believe it's almost June. It was just January 1st, and then boom, here I am on on in the middle of May. It's just unbelievable. So today, I actually have someone, in upstate New York. His name is Wyatt Roberts, and he's the head of new construction for Dandelion Energy. And he does the geothermal for HVAC systems, and they have a huge project that they did with Lennar. Hopefully, I pronounced that right, Wyatt. And Dandelion
Yep.
Energy, and they have one of the largest geothermal residential projects that's been done in the country. So, Wyatt, say hello from the Empire State.
Thanks, David. Appreciate the introduction. Great to see you here. And well, I could not share your sentiment about how much 2025 has flown by already. But I suppose we have a lot of work to do still going forward. Um, Happy
Yeah,
to join you and be on your podcast today.
yeah. Listen, I always tell people better to be busy than not. And your days just go by, and if you're having fun, it even just makes it that much better. But the reason why I had Wyatt on was I'm just finishing my house as the contractor, so I've gone through all this stuff, and I'm always looking for cool stories. And when I got the press release from the publicist, I saw the thing about geothermal and one of the largest projects. So, and he also does commercial multifamily and so forth. So his products and services can go in there. But I thought, with summer coming in and the heat, like down here, the humidity hasn't kicked in. Next month, it's coming. I'm waiting for it. And I just thought it would be timely to have Wyatt on and talk about Dandelion and how it can help you, if you're thinking about a renovation or a new build, or if you're, on that commercial side doing multifamily and some other projects where geothermal could cut your costs. That's what it's all about. Building efficiently, being green, learning new techniques, and so forth. So the way that we're going to do this, Wyatt, is we're going to do it in three parts. You're going to tell me your story, where you grew up, where you went to school, and how you ended up at Dandelion at your company today at Dandelion, and then we'll talk about lessons learned over the last 5 years, and then we can talk about the Lennar project and that development, as well as any trends that you might see in the geothermal HVAC area. And then you'll leave your contact info and one positive thought or phrase for our listeners, and then we'll close it out. So with that, the floor is yours. Tell us your story.
Oh, I appreciate that, David. Yeah. Well, as you noted, I'm coming to you from my home office in Shandaken, New York, in the Catskill Mountains. And while I have lived other places, I've been here most of my life. I was born and raised about 30 minutes down the road in Woodstock, New York. Grew up there, was married in 1999, and my wife Heather and I have raised our two boys here in the Catskill Mountains that entire time. Um, they're off to college now. One's a senior engineering student. The other just finished his freshman year as a history major. So we've got the bases well covered with them. And I've been here with Dandelion for about 6 years. Prior to that, I was a residential general contractor for the better part of 20 years. So most of my adult life working in construction, building new homes. And the last 10 years of my general contracting business was very much focused on building science, became a Passive House certified designer and builder, which is one of the world's most stringent energy standards, and just generally became obsessed with energy efficiency. And as I went along in that journey, right around 2015 or so, I began realizing I wanted to take a different trajectory in my career, try to evaluate how I could spend the next, 10 to 20 years having a real meaningful impact on the challenges that face all of us today around the changing climate and the changing way we produce and consume energy as a species, really. And while I was building great homes and very energy efficient homes, even if I hit the ball out of the park, it would have been another 300 homes in my career at the pace that I was working at. So I knew quickly I needed to be on a bigger team um, with farther reach and farther aspiration to have the kind of impact I hope to have. And I also realized that specialization would be key. So I began thinking about what is it about buildings that either consumes or saves energy, and what are the most impactful elements? And in that thought, I very quickly landed on HVAC, how we heat and cool and condition our buildings is one of the single biggest consumers, ongoing consumers of energy, and a large initial upfront expense, and therefore potential barrier to adoption of new technologies. And then from there, I drilled down to geothermal, which I would describe as the passive house of HVAC. It is the most efficient heating and cooling solution that humanity has ever come up with, full stop. That does not mean it's without complexity or expense. So there are challenges and problems to be solved in the industry to allow it to be widely adopted. But that's how I landed here. And that was right around the same time. Dandelion was founded in 2017. Our co-founder, Kathy Hanoun, is still with us and doing great work, runs our research and development teams. She recruited me, and I came in originally to found our design and engineering team, build out our design build processes. We started as a retrofit company, so we were retrofitting homes in the Northeast, New York, Massachusetts, and Connecticut primarily. We've retrofit over 3,000 homes to this date. I've had a number of different roles as Dandelion has grown and evolved. But as you said, now I lead our new construction efforts as the head of new construction, working with production builders on the residential single family and multifamily side of the aisle there. So that's it in a nutshell.
Hey, listen, it's so cool to talk to another builder, that and then you took your expertise and you're on that side, but what you learn and how you grew up and being an upstate New Yorker, a local and you stayed there. It's a very, very cool story because everything that you did over all those years and all those homes that you built molded you to be able to get into this new gig. And HVAC, like down here, it only gets cold maybe a couple months out of the year in Atlanta, but it's really, really hot. Like before we got on, the humidity, it's like God flicks the switch on in like the middle of June, and it's dog days of summer is the total synonym for heat and humidity down here in the ATL in the LA of the South, and it gets hot. And when we were building our house, the most important thing, all my other homes it would get so hot up in the summer, up in the attic or up on that third floor or whatever. And I told my wife, when we do this, I want to have natural insulation. I want to make sure everything's buttoned up. Even like with the garage doors, I told the garage door guy, I go, look, I want a thicker door. I want to make sure that during the summer that the cold air is going to be kept in, and during the winter that the hot air is going to be kept in. And I just wanted it to be, as tight as a cap on a soda bottle. You know where I'm coming from, and because you're paying for it, and
Absolutely.
and energy's expensive. It just is. And depending on what state you're in, you're probably, getting jacked on rates and stuff. So anything that you can do, that's sustainable and efficient that you can apply, to a new build, residential, multifamily, et cetera, that can lower a few percentage points on the budget. A, it helps you as the contractor, but B, it helps, the people that you're building for that they know that, you're on the cutting edge, et cetera, of technology. And technology these days is just at warp speed. So what today is really important, 6 months to a year from now, something, new or improved is going to come down the line. So um, let's kind of bridge into just some of the lessons that you learned. Your company was started in 17 and 2020 March, everything goes kaput. You think it's going to be a couple of weeks, couple of months. Here we are 5 years later, and we're still talking about, you know, the roller coaster that we've all been on. We're out of the tunnel. There's still some pit, some speed bumps and potholes that we have to go through and so forth. But talk about, how you weathered the storm and how you're, going into the remainder of 25, and then we'll talk about the Lennar development.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Appreciate that. The pandemic hit everyone hard, obviously. All industry changed. Dandelion was no different. At that time, our focus was largely single family retrofits. As I said, we've done thousands of them in the Northeast. And that requires going into lots of different people's homes to do our work, and even though we're not there for very long, so things slowed down dramatically and suddenly, as they did for much of the industry. I will say the silver lining from that period at Dandelion was some advancement in our technology usage on the design side. We basically innovated technology to survey homes and begin to do design and costing work remotely using a variety of tools, including some that were like 3D image capture that relied on satellite imagery and photos of the home that the homeowners could take, some questionnaires that they could fill out about their insulation and various details of the home that would let us quantify the load. So the silver lining was like some out of need is born sometimes innovation. And while we were down to like a skeleton crew because a lot of the in-person crews were laid off during that time, we were able to drive our processes forward in a way that has helped us with the industry. So that was a great lesson learned. And then I would say, just as a whole, coming out of the pandemic, the industry as a whole, our country as a whole, from a housing perspective, was we're further behind than we already were. We're, as most of your listeners will know, we're millions of units short of where we need to be in this country, and a lot of people are having a hard time figuring out how to attain home ownership. Something that, in our generation, many of us took for granted as possible, does not seem possible to everyone now, and a lot of it is a shortage in housing stock. So that was foundational. The sort of rebirth from that period of time, I think, was foundational. Just seeing the trends in the industry to Dandelion's switch and focus to working with production home builders and multifamily developers. Geothermal, wonderful solution, but there's no more cost-effective time to do it than at time of construction.
Oh
If
yeah.
you're building, you're going to put expensive HVAC equipment into the building, regardless of what technology you use. So why not use the best one available to you if you can connect the dots and it can pencil for your project? And so we became solely focused on that. And I'd say over the last 3 years, that has been my primary focus, working, as you mentioned, with Lennar, but also with a number of other home builders and developers around the country. And despite having been directly from that industry, man, have I learned a lot from those people. These people are housing America. Some of these companies are closing 50, 60, 70, 80,000 homes a year. And it's just amazing to see the machines they've built and their ability to maintain quality and production and cost effectiveness in a lot of these markets. I'm so happy for that customer base, actually, and for the expansion of my knowledge there. And one of the things I really learned is, geothermal is, as I mentioned, super energy efficient. Utilities love it because it's an electrified solution that does not cause a big peak demand in energy usage or spikes, so they can predict what the electric consumption is going to be as we transition to an all electric society in the way we power our buildings rather than truck and pipe delivered fuels. And therefore, they subsidize adoption of technologies like geo pretty significantly, more so in some markets than others. There's also federal support for it. But most of these are oriented at the end user, the homeowner. And very few of them traditionally were oriented directly to the builders. So as usual in this industry, the builder is supposed to pick up the expense and then pass along the glory. And that was one lesson I learned. So as we began shaping our strategies um, for bringing geothermal to market at scale in new construction, we really focused on that. What are the builders dealing with? What are the problems they're having, not just with HVAC, but across the industry to adopt? And I would say that's where I've focused my learnings and also where we focused our policy efforts to help reduce the cost of adoption of technologies that are absolute no-brainers over time, but do cost more upfront on day one. And how can we do that? And so my lessons around that have been working with their MEP teams, working with our own team, our R&D team, but also our just design and development teams to find ways to bring this to market at scale in a way that gets at or near cost parity to conventional HVAC solutions that builders are used to working with.
Explain kind of, I mean, I don't want to butcher it, so I'm going to let you do it since you're the
Yeah.
expert. Explain in just in a simple format, if I was a third grader, what geothermal is, and instead, because most people think HVAC, you got the two units, you got your intake, you got the HVAC ducts. Talk about the bit because it's underneath, your slab or your basement, and it goes way down
Yeah.
the ground. And I know what it is, but I don't want to butcher it. So give our audience
Yeah.
out there if they're not, most of them probably are because they're in construction. But hey, we're gonna talk. We have an expert here, so just
No,
give
it's
a little peek.
you're absolutely right to bring it up, and it's a good thing to touch base on. Once you're inside the building, it looks and acts like conventional HVAC. We do, forced air delivered heating and cooling. The heat pump and air handler are a packaged unit in most applications, sometimes split, deliver forced air through ducts through the building. The big thing that's different about geothermal is that it's connected to a ground loop rather and electricity rather than fossil fuel. And for us, we use closed loop geothermal exclusively. What that means is there is a ground loop. As you said, often we drill right underneath the footprint of the building in new construction. It could also be outside the footprint of the building in the yard or driveway or somewhere like that. We use conventional drilling equipment optimized for geothermal drilling, but by and large the same as anything you would drill a water well with. We drill a nominal 6-inch hole, and the depth of that hole is based specifically on the load of the building. So your manual J load, if you have a 3-ton home peak load in your home, then you're going to get a 3-ton ground loop. And that ground loop, it depends on geology and location, but typically somewhere between 100 and 200 feet per ton is required, depending in most markets. And so in that 3-ton example, say we'll put 400-foot single bore below your home, install it in one day, and then we put a U-bend pipe down that hole, use at the bottom, and we circulate water and propylene glycol for that. And effectively, all we're doing is using the earth as a heat exchanger. So that water leaves, if you're in air conditioning season, that water leaves your heat pump in your basement or mechanical room at say 80 degrees, returns to the ground, circulates, exchanges temperature with the deep earth temperature closer to 50 or 60 degrees deep earth, and comes back cooler to the heat pump than it was. And that thermal difference, that thermal exchange, we're dumping the waste heat from your home in the ground or extracting it in the winter to heat your home, is what is used to start the refrigeration cycle and deliver heating and cooling to your home. So that's the base energy. A lot of times when people think of heat pumps, they think of air source heat pumps, compressor outside, a wall cassette or a ducted unit inside. That's using the air temperature to either exhaust hot air into or to extract heat from. The only difference with us is we're a ground source heat pump. The machine works the same, but you're using that constant, steady, deep earth temperature rather than the variable outdoor air temperature. And that's where the performance difference comes from. So we're basically just using the earth beneath your home as a giant heat exchanger.
Is it competitively, for installation and cost of the equipment compared to a traditional, couple of units outside on you know where I'm coming from, basic in
Yeah.
HVAC. So is it comparable? Is it more affordable or is it?
Yeah, the above ground components, so the compressor and the air handler or cassettes and everything, they're pretty comparable. It's about the same. It's the same type of technology. Some manufacturers use both. The added expense and complexity with geothermal is the one-time installation of that ground loop. So the ground loop costs more upfront. It's but it's an asset that's designed to last the lifetime of the home. So it's you do it once, it's all below grade, you see nothing, you have no exterior equipment. And then over time, actually very quickly it pays for itself because you reduce your operating expenses 30 to 50% depending on your market compared to an air source technology. You also the replacement cycle is twice as long. The equipment lasts 25, even up to 30 years as opposed to air source. Big reason for that is just that the equipment's not sitting outside. It's sitting in climate protected mechanical space or your basement. So it's not exposed to the elements. There's no combustion chamber or fire to maintain. So it's a very simple, low maintenance item. And yeah, and then you get the aesthetic benefits on top of that of, just not having that exterior equipment to look at or listen to, which is lovely. And many markets, as we touched on a little bit, have really great incentives to help offset that initial upfront expense so that the technology can be installed at cost parity or even in some markets at less expense than conventional equipment. Geothermal enjoys an incentive landscape that no other heating and cooling technology does because it is so efficient, and therefore has upside for a lot of stakeholders in the energy community.
In a multifamily, let's say someone's putting in a couple apartment buildings and so forth, 3 stories, there's X amount of units in there. Is it the same process with digging the 6-inch hole and so forth, but then you're separating it into each one of the,
Yeah.
is that the way it works, or am I wrong on?
Yeah, there are different solutions. There can be a networked geothermal where you can put a number of buildings on a single loop field, or the individual solution that I just described for a single family application. Generally, in Dandelion's work with multifamily, our approach would be, say you have a 60 unit apartment building, 4-story, low rise, low to mid rise, and we would design a ground loop that could meet the energy needs of that entire building. And then we would bring it in multiple circuits into a manifold in a central mechanical room. And then from there, you would have risers and home runs out to each heat pump in each apartment. So, but if you had, say you had 61-ton heat pumps in that building, it's a 60-ton building, you wouldn't do 60 individual 1-ton ground loops. You would do a 60-ton loop field, probably bring it in 6 circuits or so to the building and then distribute out so that even if only a portion of the heat pumps were calling for the ground loop circulation at a given time, they'd be circulating through the entire loop. So
It's like Manhattan. I grew up there. A lot of people don't realize that, a lot of geothermal is done and steam, powers, New York City. And that's why
yeah,
you always see the steam coming through the potholes or whatever. You'd be amazed at what's underneath there, not just subway tunnels and stuff. They got all that, that's how they do it. So you're just
yeah, and
taking
it's amazing.
yeah, it is amazing, but you're just taking it to a modern level and applying it, to a, kind of a different structure, but it's still the same concept. You want to use the earth and that cooling that's natural, and you're still getting that temperature that where you're going to feel comfortable, whether it's 72 degrees or 68, whatever you want it at, it's still going to be there. But you won't have the listen, I have my HVAC. That was one of the thing when I built the house. We had the HV unit, we put a generator on there, and then we were going to pull. So all that equipment was being aside. So when the landscape architect was like, look, I don't want to see any of that stuff. I want to be able to, put some plants in front of it, or have a gate, because they're not eyesores. They're a necessity. It's a commodity item that you need. But if you don't have to have them, it just makes that side so much nicer, in my opinion.
Oh, it's amazing. The first time you walk into a community with no exterior AC or air source equipment, you don't hear that hum of compressors and you don't see them. It is really notable, just the quiet that is there. And then the other thing with some of our bigger production builders and, like the Lennar project you mentioned, a lot of these homes or townhomes that we're working in are being built on posted size lots where, the loss of that compressor is the impact of that is even more so because it might have had to sit on a very small balcony or back porch for it to fit on their lot. And now you reclaim that as social space where you can, live your life. So it is a big upside. That said, I'm not here to I mean, listen, air source equipment has been around for a long time. It has a big role to play, and it'll always be a big part of our electrified solution. This is an and not or solution. I think that they can both have wonderful application. You mentioned you're down in the ATL where it's super humid, and I can relate to that. I spent a few years down there in my time, and most of the time I've been up here in the Northeast where it can get extremely cold and extremely hot. And the real beauty of geothermal from a performative point of view is it really shines in extreme conditions. So you mentioned you get it down to 68 or up to 72. That's true. And the reason for that, as began to allude to before, is that constant deep earth temperature. So air source equipment, conventional air conditioner, you want to make your house 60 degrees on a 60-degree day. It's quite easy because you're rejecting very little heat
Mhm.
into very temperate air temperature. And if you were doing that with geothermal to 60-degree ground, it would be about the same efficiency. But when you start to push those extremes and it starts to have those 98-degree days down there and even hotter in some cases, now your conventional air conditioning or air source equipment has to reject the heat from your building into almost 100-degree air. And it has to work a lot harder to do that because it's just the physics isn't there to cause that exchange very naturally. So at the most extreme temperatures, heating and cooling wise, that equipment is at its least efficient. And the real upside of geothermal is that efficiency line just cruises right along. It's 60 degrees at 100 feet deep below your feet all year round, give or take a couple degree variance. And so the efficiency never varies, even extreme conditions. And it does allow 100% space conditioning year round. It particularly shines in the most extreme environments.
So give us a little background on the Lennar project, and how it came to fruition, and were they thinking about doing geothermal, or were they going to go the traditional route? Talk about how that all went.
Yeah, yeah, I'd be happy to. I mean, we had a great introduction to Lennar from the very beginning because their business investment arm was an early investor in Dandelion, so they were a seed round investor and re-upped in our Series B or C. That's not my wheelhouse, but early on, they've always been a great collaborator and a great supporter of Dandelion. So they and their R&D department knew right away that geothermal was a great technology. They are also one of the most cost-effective builders in the country. So they also said, well, unless this can meet cost parity, it can't be a solution for us. We just we can't swing that. So while they were supportive, it wasn't spoon-fed to us, but we got great introductions to multiple divisions. Began working with their New Jersey, Maryland, and Colorado divisions about 4 years ago. We did some proof of concept installs for them. Just how does it work? Does it work in my market? How do my trade partners react to it? How do my buyers react to it? They just wanted to see it, very tangible builders. They want to say, okay, let's see it installed and how does it go? So we did that about 3 years ago. And that was the beginning. We are the project that you mentioned, the large rollout, which is underway right now. It's a 2-year project where we're attempting to install about 1,500 homes with them across 14 different active build communities that are being built, all in the Denver metro area. So we're out in Colorado. That's the division that we got the most direction with. Did a great pilot install with them, began working with their division, their architecture, and their energy teams, and their existing trade partners um, to come up with a solution that could work at scale out there. Also began working with the local utilities, particularly XL Energy, who's been a great partner to help subsidize the transition for them. Um, and yeah, from there, we spent about a year in design and development, identifying the right communities, doing a lot of value proposition and analysis, all the pre-construction that you would normally do. And we broke ground about 3 months ago on the first community. We're now active in 3 communities, and by the end of the year, we'll be up and running in about 7, and by the end of next year, about 14 communities out there with them. Mix of townhomes, single family homes, all new construction, amazing production pace they're able to move. As a builder, I used to build about a house a year. That's they're in each market, they're building thousands of houses per year. So it's just
Oh
really
yeah.
impressive to do that and be
So,
able.
so I went to DU. So where is that in Denver? Where
Say
is
that
that?
again.
I
I'm
went to the
sorry.
University of Denver. So where is that in Denver? The Lennar
Oh
Park.
yeah, the first community and the one that there's been some press on is called Ken Carroll Ranch, and it's just south of Red Rocks, right up against the foothills,
Oh,
so on the
Morrison there.
western side of town.
Mhm.
We're also doing projects up towards Lafayette, just outside of Boulder, and then on the southeastern side of town, and starting to push out towards the airport. If you know Denver, you know the 470 ring around Denver. All of
Uh,
the communities are give or take, within 10 minutes of that 470 bypass. So.
oh, sure. When I was there, that wasn't there. It was I-25 or 225 or 70. That was the rate. But when I go back, I laugh. I'm like, from Denver to Colorado Springs, it was all green rolling fields. Now it's all just one big all corridor. It's all developed. They put the train in and all that stuff, and it's just amazing what's been done out there. But
Yeah.
but they're doing it, with
Yeah, I think
our way, right?
Yeah. I've been really impressed by the Denver development community. Like any place that is blowing up with construction, I'm sure there are things that locals miss. There's nostalgia. There's that open space is something we all covet. But they're doing a great job of building and planning communities with an eye towards the future. They're not building yesterday's homes and hoping it works out. So they really are as a community, they really are focused on how we can electrify, how we can make the transition from natural gas, how we can make sure we're putting an affordable product out there that first-time home buyers and middle-class folks can afford, and make sure these homes are going to last for a long time. So Lennar is a big part of that. I think they're one of the biggest builders in the Denver metro, and yeah, it's just a pleasure to work with them on this project, and it's going great. We're going to be putting geothermal in a lot of these homes. One of the area construction managers mentioned that this transition for him was less challenging than when they changed doorbell models once. And
Yeah.
uh, and the reason for that is we get in there before critical path vertical construction starts. So we put our ground loop in before excavation, before foundation, before everything. And then we go back in when they're doing sub-slab rough in of other utilities, spend about a half day in the house, and we get the ground loop all set up, flush filled and purged and ready to go. And after that, we bring the heat pumps in and work with our HVAC trade partners to do the final install. Takes the same amount of time as conventional equipment. So it really hasn't disrupted production at all, as long as we can keep that drill rig out in front of them by a month or two. So
Yeah. Is it applicable to a renovation project, or do you not go dabble in there? It's just, a new construction gig, because once the foundation, talk about that, or is it just you just don't go in that direction?
yeah, great question. I mean, there are some of the sales model homes in the first communities that were already built when we started. We are retrofitting the homes just so that they have the sales model representative of what's in the rest of the community. And when we do that, we drill outside the footprint, we dig a trench, and we core through the foundation, and we bring our ground loop in that way. That's what we cut our teeth on in the Northeast doing retrofits. It's fine. It's not even that hard, but it is more expensive. If we can get in there before the house starts, we can drill right where that loop needs to be. You avoid trenching, you avoid concrete boring, and some of the other complexities that take both time and money up front. So the real production model for us is to just go right down the line, install 20 or 30 homes per mobilization worth of ground loop, and that makes us much more efficient. So that's how we do it. If we need to retrofit, we will, but it's just a handful of those 1,500 homes that'll be installed that
Yeah,
way.
sure, sure. So we're in Q2 right now, in 2025. We're in the second month, almost done with it, and we're going to be June, and then the second half of the year. As you look down the pike, besides geothermal, what other trends do you see there? With heating, cooling, that's coming down the pike. With AI, everything is, who knows what's going to happen. Talk about what you see out there.
Yeah. Great question. Great comment. I think that just like starting with where you left off there with I do think there's going to be a lot of data coming our way over the next several years as we begin to report out on how these systems work, how these buildings consume energy. So we are beginning to collect data about the buildings that will allow us to refine the design process. And when I say us, I don't just mean Dandelion, I mean the entire industry. How do we evaluate the loads? The other big trend and geothermal is really shining a light on this for our production builder customers, including Lennar. Something that's different about geothermal than, say, a conventional natural gas furnace is that the cost of installation scales linearly with the load that's required to satisfy the building. So it shines a light on how impactful load reduction can be done. And you can do load reduction in your building envelope, your air tightness, your insulation, things like that, your orientation, your sizing, just the way you build and design the buildings. Because as I mentioned before, you need a certain amount of linear feet per ton. In Colorado, it's about 135 linear feet per ton. So if you cut a ton of peak load out of your building, that's 135 feet of drilling you don't have to do, and that's a real cost saver. Traditionally, the HVAC industry is like, you just double the size of the furnace. It's a few $100 different. Who cares, right? But what we're really seeing now is that um, we're doing the math. The industry is doing the math. We're not using rules of thumb, and we're right sizing our equipment. It gives better efficiency, better performance, and better cost measures. So, and in doing so, we realize the impact of reducing the total amount of energy needs. So I'm seeing production builders really meaningfully begin to look at, how can we take this 4-ton home and make it a 3-ton home? And they're not just throwing everything at it the way I did when I was in Passive House. They're looking at like what are the most cost effective, what can I do today to make an impact, and they're making real changes to simple things like putting ducts in conditioned space. For years, we put them in our hot or cold attics. Um, Better thermal enhancements to the building, particularly around air tightness, and just construction methodology. That's really a trend. And then I'd say the big macro trend that is hitting just about every market, and I expect will be ubiquitous over the course of the next decade in every major American market, is the transition to fully electrified homes. So homes that are powered, heated, and cooled with a base source of electricity. Today, some of our grids are producing pretty clean electric. Some are still on older generation plants that are using coal, even in some cases backup oil that are not super clean. But it's the only path we have to 100% clean emissions-free living because over the next several decades, the utility sector will be able to clean up how we generate electricity. The technology already exists. And once you have that, now you have plug and play future-ready homes that are all electric. And I'm seeing every builder struggle with how to make that happen. Some markets, they've been mandated. California is a lot more stick than carrot, but you basically have to build a zero energy home out there and you just got to pay
Mhm.
for it. And then there's other places like Colorado and Maryland and parts of the New York, Northeast, Washington State where it's mandated, but the utilities are also meeting the builders, halfway with subsidies that allow them to make the transition cost effectively.
Yeah,
So that's
up north, people use oil to heat their homes. Down here in the South, it's like what?
yeah.
It's not. I'm sure a few people do down here, but you don't even see it. But you go up north, everybody uses oil. Or they
It's
did.
still oil. That's how Dandelion ended up in New York. We saw that there was 4 million oil furnaces online, and that's pretty antiquated technology. But even down south, Texas, for example, they use electric resistance furnaces all the time. They have great high performance air conditioners, and then you have this electric resistance unit that's a, you know, one-to-one efficiency, whereas geothermal or even high efficiency air source equipment can be 3 to 4x as efficient as that. So I say efficient, that means emissions are lower, but it's also 3 to 4x less to operate it, right? So,
Yeah,
a kilowatt
efficiency
is a
is
kilowatt.
dollars to the homeowner.
Exactly,
To the
exactly.
engineer, it's a little different to the contractor, but to the owner, it's like, hey, what's my bill going to be?
Yeah, and end of the day, what we've really seen is like in these markets that are struggling to electrify, you really have two meaningful choices: air source heat pumps, ground source heat pumps. Colorado being a great example. And while air source can work in that market, it does struggle in the extreme cold that they get, and in some cases, the extreme heat. So it can be perceived as a downgraded comfort experience to a homeowner who was previously using natural gas, where Geo doesn't suffer from that, which is a real upside to the technology, that allows people because builders don't want to give their home buyers a less experience as they build a modern new home. So this costs the same or less as subsidized natural gas and significantly less than air source to own. And that's another real upside for these guys.
Yeah, Colorado, I think is a great place to build and learn with the extremes. We had a house up in Vail for 30 years, and every summer we had to do maintenance on the house because, through the winter you just get pounded and then the freezing and then it gets warm. I mean, it can snow in the middle of June
Yeah,
sometimes. And you just got those peaks and valleys all year long where, cold and hot and it's just not cold, like Minneapolis, it's cold all winter. But
yeah,
Vail, you could get a suntan, but the next day it's bitter, bitter, bitter cold, and so those peaks and valleys, and Denver too. It doesn't always snow in Denver. It could snow down in Colorado Springs, and it could be sunny up in Denver.
absolutely.
So
The
we have.
builders in Colorado that I'm working with now, I'm really struck by. They have more warranty claims and call-ins in the summertime than they do the winter because they're now seeing triple digit temperatures throughout the course of the summer and the swings can
Oh
be
yeah,
behind.
yeah.
So they've been making sure people were warm for a long time, but now they're facing extremes on both ends.
So if someone was out there in commercial construction coffee talk, maybe they're a residential builder and they've never done geothermal, or there's some multifamily developers out there and they were thinking about this and how they can cut their costs and have their units, that much more attractive, to purchase or, to lease and so forth. How would someone reach out to you to bounce some questions off you?
Yeah, well, I mean, absolutely. You could just hit us up at Dandelion. Probably the best way is to go right through our website, which is dandelionenergy.com. And if they want to reach me, they can find me Wyatt Roberts on LinkedIn or also just Wyatt at dandelionenergy.com. Drop me an email and we'll be happy to connect you with the right people in the company to begin looking at your project. Um, and I would really encourage everyone who's in construction development to give it a fair shake. It may not be a fit for every project, but it's certainly a fit for a lot of projects. And it'll be great to see more homes in this new construction market going with geothermal.
Hey, listen, if you're out there and you're thinking about HVAC, because you're going to have to put it in, and you never dabbled in this market, and you were thinking, oh, it's going to be more. Call this man. He's an expert. He's been around. He's installing it. He's got one of the largest, biggest developments that he's working on and phases in. And if you don't know, ask, and then you'll know. And there's nothing wrong with it. And I'll put his email in the description so you can find in his LinkedIn profile so you can have that at your fingertips. And like I said, if you were thinking about, you're doing a new development and whatever, and you wanted to get the extra edge on your competition that's also building geothermal, it's just a natural, more of a natural way to heat and cool your home and not, pushing your units because everything needs maintenance and the better. But, when you're going through, like you said, putting that hot air, making your units run harder to cool the air during the hot summers down here. I just know mine are all in all, in my old house, they were loud, they were on there. Here, it's just nice and smooth. It goes down, it comes up, boom, and you've got what you need, and then you can decide how cold or hot that you want it. So, uh,
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, David. It's a great endorsement, and I couldn't agree more. And for multifamily developers who are in your audience too, it's a really important time to take a look at this technology. There's subsidy available that can cover as much as 80% of the upfront costs. Every market's going to see 30 to 40 to even 50% coverage. And the benefits to the commercial owner are extensive across multiple fronts. So yeah. I'd love to hear from any of your listeners. Be great.
Listen, if anyone wants to reach me, I'm at David C at CCR-mag.com. Listen, why I got onto the podcast because his publicist sent me a press release on the Lennar project out there, and I saw it and I went back to her and I said, "Hey, this would be a really cool guest to have on the show." And we had to find some dates and what worked and what didn't, and boom, here he is. So, listen, send me something. It could be anything. It could be a new product release. It could be an anniversary for your company. It could be a charity golf tournament. We look at everything. We're content creators. We post content. I have two nice ladies up in Chicago. They post content all day long, and you never know where your next connection will be, and so forth. And it's like playing the lottery. If you don't buy a ticket, you can't win. If you don't send me something, I can't post it. I can't look at it. Very tough to get in the magazine. But if it doesn't make the magazine, we have all these different platforms that we have, and we post all day long. We just love looking at content. So send it to me and let us, judge the book by its cover. And our turnaround times, a couple days. We make sure it's indexed, Google, the meta tag on your title, everything, so Google can find you. And it's good for your SEO, which is your search engine optimization. That's how people find you on the web. And it's a win-win. So send us stuff. We love looking at stuff. So as we finish up, Wyatt, if there was one positive thought or phrase that you'd like to leave our listeners as we finish up the second month of Q2 and go into June and the second half of the year, what would it be?
Oh, I really appreciate that. You got me on the spot. I don't really have a catchphrase, but I do feel just very enthusiastic and energized by what's going on in construction today. We often can poo-poo things, but there are a lot of great builders doing great work. They're building future-proof homes. They're making them affordable for people to attain in every market. And there are tens of thousands of really forward-thinking people driving decisions in this industry today. We have a real bright future in front of us. So
I love
apologize for not having a catchphrase for you, but I'm inspired by your energy, your show. I appreciate you having me on, but also just by what's going on out there. There's a lot of great builders doing great work and they're just not getting enough credit for it always. So I'm very enthused to be in these major markets with these builders.
Listen, I think it's the most amazing time to be alive right now because there's so much positive in this going on in the world and in construction as a whole. You've got AI improving how things and efficiencies. Just like my home, I installed these AI smart sprinklers, and they The irrigation guy came in a couple weeks ago and he was laying. He was like, I've never even seen these things. Like, oh, they work the same way. It's just you got to get that first one set, and then you can program it on your phone, and it knows if the water's hitting the concrete by your diagram that you implement. But it's mind blowing. I found them and I was talking to the lady. I was like, hey, let's put these in here because I tried to make my house as green as possible, but I didn't want to go overboard. You know what I mean? But I knew I
Yeah.
was going to have to water the grass, and 33 pallets of sod, and I didn't want to have some of it. But I can't wait to test them out, and he's going to finish them up this week. And I just got my temp to perm water line in because it's the end of the project, and the toilets are working, and I have a septic tank because we're up by the lake, and I can't wait to see those sprinklers, and he wants to see them too. He's like, I've never done install like this, normally it's boom, boom, done, but here all the cords are in one. I got to figure it out. I said, you'll figure it out. Roberto, you'll figure it out. I trust you.
I
So.
love it. Well, I'm glad we met now. Maybe the next one you do, we'll be able to get a ground loop under that irrigation
Yeah,
system.
yeah. No, listen, I just got, listen, you know, I'll tell you, we just put our house up on the market on Saturday morning when you're talking about the sh house shortages. It went on the market at 10 a.m. I had a showing at 1:30. I had a
Yeah.
couple, and well, I think someone's in the house looking at it right now while I'm doing this. And there's just a shortage of houses. And like I said, my wife and I, we built our house. I never built to the ground. I come from a construction family, so I had a background in it. She's done plenty of basements and kitchens and bathrooms, but we never done a ground up. So she had all of her subs that she treats like gold, and they get things done, for her. But I had to find a grader, I had to find a concrete guy, framer, roofing, all that big nut stuff on your budget in the beginning. But once the house was dry, man, it was smooth sailing because we didn't have to babysit because we knew our subs they knew what they needed to do. You still have to keep an eye on things, but uh, it was an amazing. So we're ready. We've got a couple leads on a couple new homes. One's a renovation, one's a new build, and I just got another lake lot to look at, and because they saw our house. And it's amazing when your own work, like I can't wait to say I built that when I get my CO, my certificate of occupancy. But
Yeah.
our house spoke for itself. That's what these people were driving through the neighborhood. They were visiting someone else in there, and they were like, "Oh wow!" And our box was still up, and our name was on there, and they freaking called us and said,
Yeah.
"Hey." And I said, "Well, we're kind of a hybrid because we own the land, but we also were the builder, you know." And so it was, but there is a shortage. So there's plenty of opportunity out there, and the more you learn, the better off you're going to be. So that's why I have
Yep.
Wyatt on here to talk about geothermal and Dandelion Energy. A couple things before we finish up. Number one, if you're on the construction site, we want you to be safe. We want you to be able to get home, have dinner with your spouse, your kids, your pets. Watch some tube, get some REM sleep, and be able to go do it the next day. Number two, the heat's coming. But even though it's not hot right now, you got to stay liquefied on the construction sites. You make sure that you're drinking water all day. Put some of those electrolytes in your water bottle. You'll have a much better day being productive. You'll sleep better and you'll feel better when you get up in the next morning. And last but not least, hit the like button so all the algorithms on YouTube can shoot this out on the Wild Wild Web, and we can get this discussion on Wyatt and geothermal out there so they can learn what they have. God, I didn't even know that even existed, So
Thank you,
any
David.
fi any final words before you sign off from upstate New York?
No, I really appreciated the time. I share your enthusiasm for the industry. There's nothing more satisfying than building homes and getting people in them. And yeah, take a look at geothermal. It's a great solution for every new construction, and the it's available and attainable at the cost that you would expect to make your projects work. So give it a
Well,
shot.
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I'm going to sign off from Sugar Hill, just below the Beaufort Dam, about on Lake Lanier, about 30 miles north of downtown ATL. And listen, everybody, it's the 13th. You got this week, and then the following week's Memorial Day weekend, and it's the end of the year. And then you're going to go into June and the second half of the year. Before you know, it's going to be the end of 2025. There is so much going on in the world. Never a dull moment these days. And just keep your blinders on, stay positive, do your best, forget the rest, and have fun with what you do, and you'll just have a much better day. So with that, we will see you next time on another episode of Commercial Construction Coffee Talk. And Wyatt, if I come up there or I'm on the road and I find one of your projects, you give me a tour? and show me.
Absolutely, David. I look forward to it.
Oh man, I'd love to see that stuff get installed. All right,
Yeah.
everybody. We will see you next time. Cheers. Have a great rest of the week.